computer. That's good, I'll save that. Put it on the dark web, as they say.
It's not generally.
Will you turn the volume up just a little bit, do you think?
Wait,
Is it better?
Hypothetically, if I had editing verifiers, that's not.
Well, I learned that Scott Carradine's known as Brian, right? That's what I learned today, see?
He said, I learned today that Scott Caroline's name is Brian.
I didn't even know who it was until I saw Lisa's name up there.
Hey, Joseph Murphy, are you online?
He appears by phone.
I think we need one more, Brian. Bill Freeman, are you online? There's Marvin. All right, so Marvin just joined us. Joseph Murphy, Bill Freeman, are you joining us?
Yes, sir, here. Joseph Murphy here.
Joseph.
All right, so you've got a quorum. You've got JR,
I got a quorum?
JR, yourself, Judy, Marvin, Joseph, and Bill should be joining us.
Okay. So I've got, just so I'm sure, because JR, I see him, all right. Marvin, Judy, Joseph. All right, I got everybody except for Bill. And we're missing.
Duncan Gray's not going to attend.
All right, Duncan's not here, but we have a quorum. Folks, I am live and in person tonight. I am in the actual building, as they say, because of circumstances that are purely my fault. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and start. I call to order the September 14th, 2020 meeting of the Oxford Planning Commission. Commissioners, you have the agenda, or you have the opportunity to review the agenda online. Are there any additions, changes which we need to make to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion from Commissioner Riddell as to the agenda.
We approve the agenda.
I have a motion to approve. Commissioner King, do you second?
I'd like to second the motion.
I have a second. Commissioner Riddell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The agenda is approved. Now on to the minutes of the August 10th, 2020 meeting. You've had the opportunity to review those. Any changes which need to be made to the minutes from last month's meeting? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Murphy, do you have a motion on the minutes from the August 10th, 2020 meeting?
I motion that we accept the minutes and approve.
I have a motion. Commissioner Rigby, is there a second? I have a second. Commissioner Murphy, how do you vote?
How about yes?
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The minutes from the August 10th, 2020 meeting are approved. Is there a staff report tonight?
There is not.
There is no staff report, which brings us to, in general, We've had the administrative approvals. You see them there. Now we get to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is 2 cases. Quickly, they are public hearing, consent agenda consists of case number 2654. It's a request for variance regarding a fence, a carport, an additional structure to be built at 3634 Lyles Drive, and case number 2655, which is a special exception request from Blackburn Holdings regarding a front yard build-to line special exception for property located 350 feet east of Sixth Avenue and Commonwealth Boulevard. There have been no objections noted at this time to the Planning Commission or to the Planning Department. Is there anyone online who wishes to voice an objection, or any commissioner who wishes to remove either of these 2 cases from the consent agenda? I guess first, anyone online who wishes to voice an objection? Hearing none, any commissioner wishes to remove either of these cases from consent agenda? Having none, I will entertain a motion. Commissioner Rigby, do you have a motion on the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Commissioner Riddell, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Rigby, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The consent agenda is approved. Now, to our public hearings. The first is one which was postponed from 2 months, July and August. It's public hearing for case number 2641. It's the City of Oxford, and the City of Oxford has filed a request for variance from the retaining walls section of our Land Development Code for the Jackson Avenue East sidewalk project. Who's presenting that?
I've got that one, Brian.
Okay, Gray.
So the subject property is located on the south side of Jackson Avenue East and is within the city's right-of-way. The city has contracted a private engineering company to construct a reinforced concrete retaining wall in 4 portions along Jackson Avenue East. Due to the changing topography along this section of the street, the retaining wall will vary in height from 3 to 6 feet. The City of Oxford Engineering Department is seeking a 2-foot variance in order to accommodate the higher portions of the wall. The city received a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Preservation Commission for all portions of the retaining wall project in March. The engineering staff has been working with the adjacent property owners along this section on the work. Within the engineering comments, Rihanna would like to highlight the hardship for the request. She states the design of the sidewalk project was bound by ADA, FHWA, MDOT, and city regulations and requirements. In an effort to accommodate all of these in the existing topography of the adjacent properties, the buffer area and the sidewalks have been elevated above the top of the curb in places to the maximum amount possible while maintaining ADA standards for longitudinal slope. The curb was also relocated closer to the center line of the roadway, which allowed for additional width to try to accommodate all standards. Even with these allowances, it is not possible in this particular area to meet the 4-foot maximum front yard wall height standard and provide a maintainable slope for the adjacent property owner. The city wishes to meet the property owner's request for additional wall height and ensure that the adjacent property is not negatively impacted as a result of the necessary public infrastructure and safety improvement. Staff recommends approval of the variance with the 2 conditions stated in the report. The second condition, the Planning Commission grant approval of this variance with the request from the engineering department that if they need to, they could add a railing on top of the wall. I've had discussions with Rihanna about this as well, and they're also considering landscaping as a possibility, but she wanted to keep this condition in there if a railing were in fact necessary.
Would that railing be subject to historic
Yes, yes.
preservation as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Any questions for anyone who is attending tonight? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on case number 2641. It's the City of Oxford request for variance. Commissioner Riddell, do you have a motion?
Move that we approve.
I have a motion to approve. Commissioner Rigby, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Riddell, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
I vote to approve as well. And the record should reflect that Commissioner Freeman, I believe, has now joined us. Commissioner Freeman, are you there? There he is. Bill, do you have a vote on case number 2641, City of Oxford's request for variance? I can see him. Bill, can you hear me?
You're muted, Bill.
Yeah. Hey, Bill? All right, we have a quorum anyway, so it's gonna pass. We'll put Commissioner Freeman as an abstain vote at this time, unless he can join us and can hear us. It passes, so that way we can move to the Carradines who have joined us via video. And this is case number 2656. It's Brian Carradine, who's filed a request for final plat approval. It's the Amadale subdivision, lot 37. It's property located at 103 Sibley Street.
I've got this one, Brian.
Okay?
Just give me 1 second, though, because I want to share my screen here. Okay, so the applicant is requesting to amend the eastern lot line of lot 37 of the Amadale subdivision in order to add approximately 0.069 acres to their lot. Mr. and Mrs. Carradine were in the process of working with the local architect on modifications to their existing home. When it was discovered that a fenced-in area on their lot was actually property from the adjacent lot 38. Once this
Hey, Ben, this is JR. I can't hear anything you're saying.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I turned the microphone on. That helps.
Much better. Thank you, Ben.
You bet. Thank you. Let's start over. The applicant is requesting to amend the eastern lot line of lot 37 of the Amadale subdivision in order to add approximately 0.069 acres to their lot. Mr. and Mrs. Carradine were in the process of working with a local architect on modifications of their existing home when it was discovered that a fenced-in area on their lot was actually property from the adjacent lot 38. Once this was brought to their attention, the applicant contacted the adjacent property owner, Mr. Marchbanks. Mr. Marchbanks agreed to convey this property to the Carradines, which is why the applicant is requesting the proposed amendment. As originally platted, lot 37 measured approximately 0.368 acres, and with the additional property from the adjacent property, lot 37 will now measure approximately 0.437 acres. Mississippi subdivision law requires the applicant proposing any change in a platted subdivision to notify all persons to be adversely affected thereby or directly interested therein, to allow them to express concerns that they may have with the proposed change. The identification of who such persons may be is left to the discretion of the applicant. The applicant includes letters of support from the owners of lot 36 and lot 38, the persons that they believe to be directly interested in this subdivision amendment, and they do not find themselves to be adversely affected by, by this modification. Engineering did provide some comments There are 2 encroachments shown on the plat that need additional information. Sheet 1.0 of the plat needs to reflect the following. Number 1, the survey shows a wooden privacy fence encroaching onto adjoining lot 38 in the southeastern portion of the property. This needs to be noted, and the distance of the encroachment should be shown. And then 2, there is a block stone retaining wall with a wooden privacy fence shown on the survey encroaching into the right-of-way of Washington Avenue. This needs to be noted, and the distance of the encroachment should also be reflected. The presence of these encroachments and their notation on the plat does not indicate a transfer of ownership or the granting of approval for them to be located beyond the property lines. In particular, the approval of this plat does not in any way indicate that the city approves, supports, or condones of the right-of-way encroachment. Staff has not researched the history of the retaining wall and fence and does not know if prior permits or board approval were or were not granted. Staff is not aware of any complaints of issues regarding the wall either. If no person objects or found by the Planning Commission to be sufficiently adversely affected, staff recommends approval of this amendment to the final plat with the conditions stated below.
Okay, is there anyone joining us who has an objection to the request from the Carradines in case 2656 for the amendment to the subdivision plat? Any questions from the commission? The Carradines are joining us. All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the request for the final plat approval in case 2656. Commissioner King, do you have a motion on case 2656?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the final plat approvals amended in case 2656.
I have a motion to approve subject to the conditions of the staff. Is there a second? Commissioner Rigby?
Second.
There is a second. Commissioner King, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman? I think his internet has kicked out, so we'll go to Commissioner Murphy.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The Carradines are now, it's approved, and the lot has been amended. Now you can
Thank you very much.
you can pay taxes on that extra .068 acres.
We've been paying taxes on it.
All right, congratulations. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
You bet.
Now, public hearing for case number 2657. It's Updraft Investments LLC, and it's a final plat approval as amended for the Lamar Phase 2, Lot 1. It's property located west of North Lamar Boulevard, south of Molly Bar Road, and east of Chickasaw Road.
Yeah, I've got that one.
All right, Gray.
The Lamar Phase 2, Lot 1 is within a multi-phase traditional neighborhood development we all know as the Lamar. In June 2018, a site plan was approved for the Lamar Phase 2 and referred to as mansion plats. In July 2020, just recently, the Mayor and Board of Aldermen approved a modification to the regulating plan for the Lamar T&D to allow a change to the area designated for multifamily homes to be constructed with single-family detached homes. Lot 1 was initially platted with the intent of having 5-unit rental residential structures. The applicant is now proposing a plat amendment to create 11 single-family lots referred to as lots 1A through lot 1K. These lots range in size from 3,300 square feet to just over 6,000 square feet. The site has already been mass graded, and this phase did not require tree mitigation. The Land Development Code has been amended since Phase 2 was initially platted, and future phases of the T&D developments now require tree mitigation as needed. The landscape plan remains the same from previous iterations of Phase 2 for frontage trees. These frontage trees will be required to be on private property and not within the city right-of-way. The previous plat designed all lots to have rear-loading parking. The current proposal has front-loading parking lots for lots 1A through 1G, and rear loading for lots 1H through 1K via a private alley. The rear setbacks for lots 1A through 1G will be established as 20 feet, and the rear setbacks for 1H through 1K will be 25 feet to accommodate the rear loading along the private alley. The applicant has indicated that they will be constructing garages for each of these units that will provide 2 parking spaces in the garage with the potential for 2 parking spaces in front of the garage. On-street parking will be available for residents and guests to use along Jenny Avenue. And on to the engineering comments, the highlights from that. I spoke with Rihanna. I think engineering's main concern is related to the parking, specifically the driveway widths and the on-street parking. They also would like to have to review the construction plans in detail, which were not provided as part of this application. Engineering states that the on-street parking layout will have to be planned with careful considerations for the driveways, fire hydrants, crosswalks, and intersections in order to meet how many spaces are available for on-street parking. And that number may be less than the 16 spaces originally considered. Also wanted to mention that the consideration to the mail carrier room and engineering would also prefer that yellow curb will be needed to be installed on the roads prior to the city accepting the streets. Within the report, the applicant provided a example of of one of the lots and the widths of the driveways. I spoke with Rihanna about that, and she felt that I think the drawing that was provided, that's on the screen now, I think engineering would prefer them to be even smaller, something more like 12 to 14 feet, and the iterations that they've seen have been 16 to 20 feet wide. It's just 12 of them. Like I said, Rihanna can discuss more about that. I think there's been several iterations and maybe meetings about the width of the driveways.
So it shows 12 where the sidewalk is. That section would obviously already be concrete. The concern is at the curb line where that opening is much larger. That's the area that we're concerned about. And the 12 feet across the sidewalk, that's already existing sidewalk. That will be concrete either way, whether it's a driveway or a sidewalk. But what we're concerned about is the curb opening and the area, the green space area. We'd like to see that narrowed down. So there are not dimensions provided on this sheet showing what that opening would be at the curb.
Thanks, Rihanna. So yeah, those were the main highlights from the report. With these comments, staff recommends approval of the amended final plat with the 12 conditions laid out in the report. Like I said, we're here, Brianna's here, and the applicant engineer is here as well.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? I understand, Paul, Christina, are you in? All right.
Yeah, I'm here. I think Shane Cardwell is also on the line.
Okay.
Who's been more involved with this, but I can try to help answer questions if I need to.
All right. Any questions for the applicant or the engineer? You may not have to answer any, Paul. Any questions from anyone joining us tonight who's not on the commission? I did hear something. Is there a question from the commission?
I have a question.
Okay, Judy.
Or Leanna or Shane, I'm not sure which. But I can't see it anymore. The driveway issue. So you pull in and then sort of angle into it's a 2-car garage, but you want a single car entrance to it. Is that the issue?
driveway being wide enough for two cars. It was more like 16 or 18 feet wide, I believe. So we were trying to reduce that driveway width to help accommodate the concern with the curb cut distance.
Okay.
And each of these homes, they're going to be sort of custom to each lot as well. So.
Right. Okay. It just looks hard to get in and out of that. I know that house might not be built like that, but it looks hard to get in and out of that garage.
I'd like to follow up on that. Is the issue that there's a lot more curb cuts now than originally planned, and so that's reduced the amount of street parking?
Well, yes, that is one issue, but, so that is part of the issue. The other part is, because these lots are so narrow, to have, the lots are only 55 feet or 50 feet wide in the areas that are proposing the garages, front access. So it really, you're taking basically, if you do 20 feet, then you're taking as close to half of the driveway curbs that's available and cutting that open for a driveway curb cut. And that cuts down on the area that can be used reasonably for signs, for repairs. It just presents issues. And so, like when we have these narrower lots, to also have the narrower driveway openings, and that's something that part of this has been an issue because with rapidly turning this around, we've not been able to have a lot of extensive conversations and discussions about how do you make this work. So we're trying to figure this out, and this was the first street that we've seen with a narrower street with a narrower lot. So this is the first one that we're really getting into. How do you make this work? The concern is if you have such wide curb cuts so close together because of the lot spacing, then your street basically is just becoming a whole bunch of curb cuts and not usable right of way for other purposes.
Right. So about 40% of the street is a curb cut.
If you in this area where these houses are, yes.
Yeah.
And they do have a portion that does not have curb cuts, so that offsets that part. But in here, yeah, about 40% is curb cut.
Does engineering need more time to review all of it? I mean, there's so many conditions. And maybe this is also maybe a question for Ben, just the total number of conditions. I mean, has there been sufficient time to review all of this? It seems, I don't want to approve anything if staff or engineering is rushed or...
I'm looking at Ben.
Yeah,
You can't see me looking at him through the screen.
Sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here, take a look. I mean,
that's fine. It just seems like there's so very many conditions on here, and some of which seem...
well, I mean, Marvin, I can tell you that of the planning conditions, I think some of them are just noted and typical of the approval of the plat by the mayor and board of aldermen. I think the frontage trees is something that we consistently put on as a condition for for this type of a plat, and this we want to ensure that those trees as they get planted are planted in the right location, and then I'll let Rihanna speak to the conditions that she has in here as it pertains to engineering.
So I think our understanding is that considering the impact of COVID and our community, and the unusual circumstances we're working in, that the objective is to work out the details. We've provided conditions that address all of engineering's concerns, and I think that my understanding is we will resolve. We will provide conditions, and then we will resolve these issues between now and the time building permits are issued, or as they're conditioned. You'll see several projects tonight that are similar in that regard. So I think that's where we are.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that the confidence level is high.
Can I just ask, Brianna, this is JR, which of the conditions addresses engineering's concerns about the parking arrangements and the curb cuts?
I think condition number 3, that the construction plans must be provided and approved by staff. So the construction plans will have to show the curb cuts, and I think that will be where that's addressed, as far as we're concerned.
Hey, Commissioners, this is Hollis Green. I wanted to just take a moment and, Rihanna, particularly about these numbers of conditions, and I wanted to state for the record that I'm the one that has been pushing to get these moved forward as fast as we could, given our circumstance. So you may see some that have more conditions than are normal, but these developers they want to be heard, and it is, they have the right to ask to be put on the agenda.
This is Paul Castellanos. Excuse me. I will say that as far as construction drawings, I mean, all the infrastructure that's in place is already complete. The street is built, the water, sewer, all the utilities are in place to serve these lots. As far as the driveways, we're certainly willing and will work with Rihanna to make sure she's comfortable with how those driveways are configured. I don't think anything that we're proposing now or anything we've shown in any of these iterations violates any sort of code requirement for driveway widths or the number of driveways. The separation between the driveways and the property line is a code requirement, and we are going to meet those requirements. As far as the width goes, we're again perfectly happy to work with Rihanna to make sure the number and the configuration of the driveways accommodate her concerns.
And that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing the same from Rihanna as well, is that she believes, correct me if I'm wrong, Rihanna, you believe that Paul's correct in that these issues, while they may be, understanding that, number 10, yellow curb be installed, I mean, we understand that, street lights, but the engineering aspect of it, you think that it certainly can be discussed and a solution found prior to presenting this to the Board of Aldermen for approval?
I do. I certainly do.
And ultimately, that's the final say, right?
That's right.
That's right. I have one more comment, just since Hollis brought up several of these cases having several conditions. My only concern about conditions like this, especially when some of the conditions are vaguely worded in terms of what the crux of the issue is that under normal conditions, I think all of this would come out and there'd be a proposal for the resolution, and the commission would, vote up or down on that resolution or come up with some compromise. The only thing that I'm a little concerned about is if we get in the habit of this, it goes down the road where we've already handed it over to engineering to approve whatever the final situation is, and they can't reach an agreement with the developer. And then what's the procedure from there, since we've made it ban both accounts? I'm not saying that's going to happen here. It sounds like everybody can reach an amicable outcome here, but just to be mindful of that in the future.
Sure. That's Right, I would like to agree with JR, and, and as far as I know, planning staff a while ago, right, we, correct me, Ben, there was the acknowledgement that staff would respond within X number of days to builders, right? And get comments back in an appropriate amount of time, and so I believe that's happening, and that should be our standard. I guess the difference is when development changes, but they had originally planned, and Paul, to your point, I think you're right. It sounds like everything is fine. My only concern was just whether or not engineering did have sufficient time to review everything. So I'm sure everything is fine, and if Rihanna says so, and to Brian's point, it's going to have to go to the board of aldermen anyway. I just, for me, it's just as much the process, making sure the process is followed correctly. So that's really where I was getting at with my comments.
And I assume that if Rihanna still has concerns and there's some inability to reach a compromise, that the wording will be different when it approaches for Board of Alderman approval, in that they would have basically staff does not recommend due to A, B, C. And the final call on that is simply the Board of Alderman's call. So again, I agree. We want to make sure that our staff has enough time to address it. But if a staff member like engineering and Rihanna tell me that, hey, I have no problem, I think we're good, then I'm good with that. Any more questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, Joseph Murphy.
Yeah, Joseph.
Quick, procedural question, piggybacking off of Mr. Rigby. In the event the Board of Aldermen denies because of some disagreement, or we can't reach an agreement between engineering and the developers, if it ends up being denied, is it just reapplied back to the Planning Commission and we start this all over? Is that what would happen, procedurally speaking?
Yes, that's right, Joseph. They would file a new application and they would modify it as needed, and then it would come back before the commission, and we would at least document what that process, what happened in the process. It went to the mayor and board of aldermen, it was denied. Now they're submitting for a new approval.
Yeah, I think it would be a reissue of final plat approval, and it would be second amended plat, because we're hearing now the amendment, and if it's not approved, then it would be a second amended plat to come back before us for consideration.
Very good, thank you.
Is there any additional, are there any additional questions? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion regarding the request for final plan approval for case number 2657. Commissioner King, do you have a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the final plat in case 2657 with staff conditions.
Is there a second, Commissioner Riddell?
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Commissioner King, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The record should also reflect that I think Commissioner Freeman has given up and his internet has stalled on him, so he is no longer attending. So I vote yes as well. It's unanimous. 2657 is approved. This brings us to 2658. It's Oxford Farms LLC. And this is a request for site plan approval for the cottages at Oxford Farms. Before we get to the presentation, I want to make sure, and it is included in the case notes that I received, but there was an email from Donna Blevins, a citizen, regarding this, and I want to make sure that everyone saw that. So let us know if you did not, and we'll get it up on the screen.
We also posted that to Board Pack, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So it is included in the record.
Who's got it?
I've got that one.
All right, Gray.
Thanks. So this property is approximately 17.5 acres in Oxford Farms. This development will consist of a total of 108 units that will be owned through a common interest development. There are 29 detached units and 79 attached units proposed. Each of the duplex units has a detached garage. Highlights from the other site plan review elements. As Brian stated, we received an email this morning, from Donna Blevins, who lives north of this property. And she had an issue with the buffer and how wide the buffer would be. There is a blue line stream directly north of this property, and that is the only part of this application that requires a buffer. The applicant is required to maintain a 50-foot wide unbroken vegetative screen along within this buffer. A mix of magnolias, pines, and evergreen cedars are proposed. There are also additional trees, existing trees that will remain in this area along the length of the property line behind the northernmost units. And the stream buffer is required to have at least 80% visual screening at the tree's maturity. This buffer is compliant with our standards, and we've also had in discussions with the applicant's landscape architect, that the landscape architect has also provided a note on the landscape plans to confirm the visual screening. Other landscape highlights from the report, there will be 117 trees mitigated on site and integrated into the landscape design. Thus, tree mitigation is not required. As I mentioned earlier, the proposal is considered a residential common interest development and meets the additional standards per the Land Development Code. Staff received a copy of the covenants on September 9th. And from engineering, staff's review of the plans were provided to the design engineer late afternoon on September 4th. These comments that were sent out included technical changes to the water and sewer layout, questions regarding ownership of sewer, grading, drainage, and stormwater issues. Revisions to those comments were sent back to the engineering department from the applicant engineer late Tuesday, September 8th. Staff is currently reviewing everything for compliance from traffic to stormwater. In regards to traffic, the most recent traffic impact study for Oxford Farms was updated in July 2018. The study provided a number of recommendations based on the projected complete build-out in 2025. Staff has requested additional information regarding the impact to traffic and the potential for a signal to be required at Farmview Drive, although staff does not believe the development alone would warrant a signal at this time. Staff does not anticipate that the proposed development will have any immediate negative impact on traffic. Condition 6 has been provided from the engineering department to address the traffic study. Staff recommends approval of this site plan for the cottages at Oxford Farms with the 9 conditions stated in the report. And the applicant engineer's on the line, Rihanna's on the line, we're here. Any questions?
First, I want to ask, is Ms. Blevins, is she joining us?
I do not believe so. She just wanted to, she asked about the development this morning and then sent an email that she wanted provided for the record.
Certainly, my question was, is her issue with the buffer to the blue line stream or buffer to her residence?
Based on our conversations, it sounded like it was more about her issue with visibility between the reference and her, not the blue line stream.
Where is she in reference to this development?
Harlan Drive, which is just north of, if you're on South Lamar, just north of One Stop Sign, there's a cul-de-sac, it's just a cul-de-sac road just north.
You can see right here's Harlan Drive, right at the top of the screen. Right here's Harlan Drive.
Yeah.
I believe she lives on the south side of Harlan.
Here's Oxford Way.
Yeah. And there's the blue line stream.
That's right, our properties.
I'm just curious as to where, I mean, because it's not shown on the map. There's no requirement, as I've reviewed it, there's no requirement that there be a buffer between her property and this development.
Correct.
Outstanding the easement setbacks and whatnot.
Correct.
Okay.
You can see right there's Miss Blevins' property. You can see right there's Miss Blevins' property.
And, right.
And the property that we're talking about is that piece and part of this piece. You can,
Okay.
north of Oxford Way.
She got the Fitch property is, okay,
Fish property is,
north of that.
that's right.
Okay.
You can see in the plans.
All right, that was just my question. I want to clear it up for everybody involved. Are there any questions for the engineer from the commission? Is there anyone joining us tonight who may have an objection or wishes to have ask a question regarding this request from Oxford Farms? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on case number 2658. Commissioner Murphy, do you have a motion?
Motion to approve subject to staff conditions.
I have a motion to approve, subject to staff conditions. Commissioner Riddell, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Murphy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. 2658 is approved. If I'm reading this correctly, 2659 was withdrawn, and which brings us to our final case of the evening, which is 2660. It's Blackburn Holdings LLC, and it's a request for site plan approval for the Commons, property located approximately 350 feet east of Sisk Avenue and Commonwealth Boulevard intersection.
All right, and I've got this one.
All right, Ron.
So this subject property is part of 16.6 acres inside the Oxford Commons. Okay. Can y'all hear me? Yeah. Okay, in any case, so Oxford Commons PUD, it's track B1. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 mixed-use commercial buildings as the first phase of the Commons development, and that'll be on approximately 1.9 acres of the 16.6. The first building will be about 832 square feet, 2-story building, and the second building will be 7,010 square feet, 2-story building. The project was a subject of case 2655, a special exception to the Build 2 line, which was just approved. So the major planning comment on this is going to be about parking. The plan currently proposes 225 parking spaces. The combined 28,842 square feet of retail and office space requires 96 spaces, leaving 129 as overage. This overage is to correspond with a future phase of development. While not yet proposed, the future phase tentatively consists of 2 restaurants with tavern space totaling 4,800 square feet of patron area, and that requires 48 spaces. And then there will be programmed outdoor area of about 15,000 square feet requiring 75 spaces. All total, that's 123 spaces, leaving about 6 spaces as overage, which is well within the 25% requirement. Applicant has stated that construction of the overage parking will increase connectivity to provide access from the site towards Commonwealth Boulevard to the west, and will provide efficiency of construction, as these spaces will be required for future phases, and if all spaces are constructed now, duplications of efforts can be avoided. Staff is generally supportive of these claims, and it's our position that construction of the overage parking as planned should go ahead, with a caveat that future phases will be required to meet parking standards with this currently proposed parking. If future phases deviate substantially from what's described here, either parking spaces will need to be created or removed, or a variance will be required in order to bring everything into conformance with section 4.9.1.1. Generally, everything is in conformance with the complete streets plan. Yes, with landscaping and grading, foundation plantings have been substituted for planting beds about 10 feet from building frontage, which will achieve the same goals as foundation plantings. And this site was considered an area previously developed, and therefore is not subject to the 2015 tree mitigation variance, so no tree mitigation is required on this site. The PUD data table has 75,000 square feet of commercial uses for tract B1, minus what's here. What's being proposed will leave 46,158 square feet for future use. Engineering has comments, and the highlights of those are that a traffic impact study is not going to be required due to the TIF agreement between the cities and Oxford Commons LLC. And then with stormwater, the biggest one is that documentation is going to be required to state who has legal rights to the stormwater management facilities and detention ponds. And we've got conditions to that effect listed below. Staff recommends approval of the site plan for the commons with the below stated 7 conditions.
Thank you, Robert. I believe we have the architect of the building as well as the engineer of the site online. Are there any questions from the commission for any individual? Okay.
I have a question. This is JR. Paul, are you the engineer on site?
Yeah.
I realize this is a little bit of a naive question, but we're gonna fill in a pond that exists that's pretty deep and vegetated to create another stormwater detention pond on the northwest corner of the property.
That's correct, yes. So, that pond has been there since the first phase of Oxford Commons was developed, pushing 15 years ago. And it's sort of become somewhat of an eyesore and a mess right there, and it's a very prime piece of property. So we've talked honestly for years since Mr. Blackburn got control of this property about trying to reconfigure that so that pond is in a less visible location and less of a prominent location. So yes, that is the answer. The plan is to relocate that pond. It still accommodates the same property owners that it does now. This property plus several other properties have been developed over the years, including Malco and Wendy's and True Hotel and El Charo and basically everybody on that in that area west of this proposed site. But yes, that's the plan.
Okay.
Any additional questions? Anyone here or anyone attending online who wishes to voice an objection or ask a question regarding the application? Hearing none, let the record reflect that Bill Freeman has joined us once again just in time to get his $100. Commissioner Freeman, I'll let you. Do you have a motion on case number 2660?
Yes, sir. I would recommend approval with staff conditions.
Thank you. Commissioner Riddell, is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Freeman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. It is approved. Folks, that takes care, at least from what I can see, that takes care of our agenda. Commissioner Freeman?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
It's about time. So, yes, I'll move adjournment.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn. It should be noted that you'll only receive $25 for tonight's visit instead of the usual $100. Is there a second to Commissioner Freeman's motion to adjourn?
A second.
There is a second from Commissioner Riddell. Commissioner Murphy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner King?
Yes.
Commissioner Rigby?
Yes.
Commissioner Riddell?
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman?
Yes.
I vote yes as well, folks. I appreciate your time. Thank you, and we'll see you next month. Meeting adjourned.